I'm King Lincoln, that's right, it's time for the Humble Choice August 2021 review. Now it's my birthday month, and as a present I got a Humble Choice with 2 games I already own. That's not a bad thing though, because they're 2 of my favorite games, I get a chance to discuss them with all of you. It may even have changed my opinion on one of the titles. As always, I play the Humble Choice games for 1 hour and compile my opinions. I'll tell you who I think should play them, who probably should skip them, and so on. With that said, let's get started with the first game I already own and the biggest title this month. Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. This was a massive Kickstarter, one of the biggest of all time, and released with relatively no problems outside of admittedly a troublesome Switch port. It's a game that delivered on all its promises, and I'm excited to see it hit Humble Choice. Bloodstained Ritual of the Night is a spiritual successor to the Castlevania Symphony of the Night game, as well as the handheld offspring of that title. It wears those influences on its sleeve, and that's to be expected. Koji Igarashi leads this team, and he is best known for Symphony of the Night. The fact is, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night is a very competent Metroidvania. It isn't perfect, but it's trying to measure up to the best Castlevania of all time, and possibly the strongest Metroidvania of all time, and that was always going to be an impossible challenge. I actually got this game at launch, and I gave this game a 8 out of 10. As I'm playing it again for this video, I honestly think I might have been a little bit too harsh on this title. There are a few issues with it, of course, but this just feels incredible. Pick this up if you like Metroidvanias. Like, period. Hard stop. That's all I have to say. If you enjoyed the Metroidvania genre at all or are curious about it, this is a must-get title. At the same time, this is a Metroidvania imitating the biggest Metroidvania. So if you can't stand the genre at all, well, this is obviously not going to be for you. Last Oasis, another survival game set in a desert where you have to build a base and avoid succumbing to elements, enemies, and of course, other players. It's a concept that's been done a lot, though there are some interesting twists with this title. The big concept here, though, is that there's multiple different vehicles. The first vehicle I was able to build was a walker that had the character pedaling to move it around. It actually looks pretty cool, and you can also make a mini base on top of it. However, I still don't get this genre, and Last Oasis hasn't really solved it. They really pushed the idea of an MMO aspect to the game, and the game has been a bit on life support. There's been only about 500 active players before Humble released this, though on Thursday after Humble, all of a sudden the numbers jumped up to about 2,500 players playing right now. It's still there, and this is 2 days after Humble launch, so I think actually the community is coming together again to welcome the new players. Or, kill them. That being said, I've heard reports of this mainly being a PvP game, and the higher level characters have a lot of advantage over new players. Also, while there's a lot of different and interesting things here, it is still a survival game, so it still involves the usual water, food, and stamina management. So pick this up if you like survival games and need another, especially if you enjoyed Conan Exiles from a couple years ago. I do think the community will only be here temporarily, and before the month is over, the player base will dip down to around 500 again. But if you like the idea of a survival game, well, this could definitely work, and there's ways that they can mitigate that problem. The vehicles do feel pretty interesting as well in a potential Mad Max type of way. Superliminal. This is the second title I already owned. Now, the easiest way to explain Superliminal is it's a first-person puzzle game similar to Portal, but it's more focused on perspective puzzles as well as manipulating that perspective. Superliminal is an excellent puzzle game, one well worth playing just due to how clean the puzzles are and how well designed they are. This is a game that will push players out of their comfort zone with how they look at the world or think about it. Superliminal will keep coming up with interesting twists and puzzles that will impress players. It will also force them to make interesting logical leaps even if they aren't fully able to explain how they made some of those connections. I personally played through and beat this game twice, once on Epic and once on Steam, because I actually enjoyed this game so much. It's about a 2.5 hour experience, which is a bit on the short side, but it's a solid and enjoyable 2.5 hours. It will also leave the player very satisfied. Pick this up if you enjoy puzzle games or like what you're seeing now. This is a first-person puzzle game, there's no combat, but it is still excellent at what it does. However, if you want that action or you don't like puzzle games specifically, well, again, this is not going to be for you. Out of Space. This is an odd game. It's a cooperative experience where players try to power up and claim a space station while beating back an alien scourge. At least that's how the game themes it. Really, if you tilt your head a little and think about it, you're cleaning up messes and killing enemies while trying to earn money to buy new things. The goal of the game is to power all the rooms in the station. Most of the game is repetition. The gameplay here was good, except also kind of tedious. It's a battle to take over any room, and players will have to play defense to avoid losing gained ground. Players will have to grab water buckets to throw water on objects, and they can also use a mop to attack enemies or wipe up messes. There's a roguelite aspect, so players can come back to play more and find new levels. Though this game is intended for multiplayer, you probably should try to find friends for either couch co-op or online. The public online system did have some problems for me when I tried to find a match. I found one player and had a good time, but then I got stuck in a soft lock the next 3 attempts. Pick this game up if you need something cooperative to play with friends. There's not many couch co-op games, and this is a pretty decent choice, but if you have something else to play, that might be better, or if you're going to only play single player, well, this isn't that great. There are just better games out there, and this one really does feel like housework. Ick. We Need to Go Deeper. A submarine roguelite where players have to work with a crew or bots to dive deeper and deeper into the ocean while manning different stations. There are 3 ships, each of varying size, so a 2-man crew can work as well as a 4-man crew. Now, I wasn't really sure how much I'd like this game with its forced multiplayer, but this was actually a lot of fun. There's no tutorial, but I learned the game in under 20 minutes with minor experimentation, and from there I had so much fun I ended up playing extra. There's a very solid cooperative feel, and everyone's working towards the same goal. Getting money, getting XP, and of course, going deeper. The only real issue is there's no couch co-op. You can play on LAN mode, which means you have to buy more games, of course. There is also public and private online matches, as well as, of course, bots. But I would actually recommend playing with a group of friends, especially if you have voice chat. Pick this up if you want a game to play in multiplayer. It can be a little bit rough around the edges, but the gameplay is very solid, and the experience kept me wanting to play more to see what might happen next. Carto. In October 2020, I made a joke that if I waited long enough, Carto might be released in the humble choice. Well, 10 months later, and that came true, and I'm glad. Carto is an excellent game. Carto's main gameplay is the ability to manipulate a map, and suddenly the world around you will change in near real time. Moving a map square on the map screen, and suddenly everything changes. Carto is set up as a level-based experience, giving players different characters, puzzles, and goals in every location. Out of the 3 areas I've been through, each one has a different style and feeling to the story, giving a fresh experience. If Carto can keep up the solid writing and interesting characters as well as that great gameplay, this will be an excellent adventure. It's said to be about 5 or 6 hours long, so I'm hopeful it will fill that time with a worthy experience. Pick this up if you like puzzle games, again. At the same time, this is a bit of a strange style of puzzle, which it mostly involves moving map pieces around or catching clues from what people will repeat multiple times. And again, if you don't like puzzles, well, alright, this one might not be for you. As Far as the Eye. This is a roguelite turn-based worker placement game. Players will have a group of characters who are on a trip to a place called the Eye, the only place safe from a coming apocalypse. Players will have a limited number of turns to gather supplies for the trip to avoid certain death before having to move on to the next location. Now, each spot on the larger map will ask for different characters, different resources, and different abilities, and players will have to find the best path from the starting location to the location of the Eye and earn those resources before time runs out. I got through 2 out of the 5 tutorials and the first part of a run. I expect the game will get decently difficult before long, but overall it's a fun and inventive game that will probably take hours to get a handle on and even longer to master. Pick this up if you enjoy turn-based roguelites. This is a bit slower than what many fans are probably used to in that genre, but it also has a high level of strategy and pushes the player to avoid hoarding and overconsumption, but rather to plan ahead. Cepheus Protocol. Man, this is a rough one. It's a game where you're fighting as a form of the CDC in this universe against an infection and are terminating the infected with extreme prejudice while you hunt down Patient Zero. It's also an RTS that's trying some new things, obviously. However, this is an early access game, and I really stress the word early. There's only 2 game modes in this, with a horde mode where you just kill enemies, and a pandemic mode, which I think is the main game mode. But man, what a poorly timed game to come out in May 2020 to focus on a pandemic that's spreading like wildfire. Still, the gameplay here is also just really weak, and while it is an RTS, it doesn't feel like an entertaining one, at least not yet. Everything feels incomplete. There's 4 different tutorials, and I do mean 4. There's a video, a series of pages that come up before the game, a website that appears to have no information that's linked from the game, and a text box that's at the top of the map which has poor UI but also just is another info dump. The game talks about the fact that it's in the 2nd year of development and the roadmap is really stretching out in front of it, but like I said, the game isn't that interesting or entertaining to play, and it's just so frighteningly bad to me. I was shocked at the state of the game, and I'm staggered that it's so positively reviewed on Steam. I honestly can't recommend this one. This is a complete gamble, but this game as it is today really isn't worth your time and honestly may never be. If you're going to get this game, I'd put it aside and hope there's a full release one day. If you want to buy the bundle just for this game, I'd probably recommend holding off and seeing what the final game will eventually look like, assuming it actually does get there. Drake Hollow. I really don't know who this game is for. You have these ultra cute characters called Drakes, you have the Fortnite skins, and players have this ability to build up a village and try to give them food, water, and entertainment. But then the Drakes are actually in this world with like a dismal outlook and grimdark sets of enemies. So is this game kind of for kids or for adults? I couldn't tell you. It sits in the middle in an uncomfortable area where adults might find it too cutesy and young kids probably won't like the dark visuals. Drake Hollow is about farming resources and using them to build up that home area. Players will travel to multiple islands to explore them and gather schematics which are needed for new buildings, and at the same time they'll also be clearing these dangerous areas. There is a multiplayer component that I didn't have a chance to explore, but I struggled to try to find resources. Islands have a bit of a limited resources, and it's not long before they run out. They don't seem to respawn that quickly, so it's a decision made to push players to explore farther out. But it is a bit frustrating as every trip takes longer and longer to reach an interesting part of the map. There does appear to be some interesting mechanics such as building networks to multiple islands and leveling up drakes, but both of those mechanics were far further out than that first hour. Pick this up if you want a different type of survival with a focus on building a town for cute characters and foraging. There's a really interesting stylistic game here, but it combines 2 extremes, so check the visuals on display here. If you like what you're seeing, it's probably worth checking out. I'm probably going to pass on it myself, but it's not a bad experience, and whenever I hear the name, I'm still thinking of Nathan Drake from Uncharted in case you're wondering. Nowhere Prophet. This is a card-based roguelite, and if you immediately think of Slay the Spire, I'm with you, but Nowhere Prophet is a pretty innovative take on it. Instead of cards, you have a group of loyal followers and are on a pilgrimage to a far-off place, but at the end of the day, the followers are treated as cards, and this is still a deck-building game. The combat here is focused on a more strategic battle system where character placement and choice matters quite a bit. Players and enemies will get higher and higher energy levels as battles go on, so larger forces can be deployed, and there's a lot more that can be done. Players can also lose their cards or followers, whichever one you want to call them, if the cards are defeated twice in battle, with the first time wounding the card. That makes the cards weaker, but also cheaper to summon, so it's an actually interesting mechanic. There's just a lot of little changes like that to the typical deck building formula. I have to admit, I think Nowhere Prophet could be really interesting even if it is quite difficult. I'd probably need 5 to 10 hours to decide if this is the next big deck builder, and I think by that time I'd get my money's worth either way. I also really like the idea that every location has an event rather than just a random battle that happens in most roguelites, and that is very much appreciated. Pick this up if you need another deck building roguelite. This is a pretty different take on the formula, and I think it's quite fresh. It's similar to Slay the Spire, of course, but not the same game. At the same time, if you don't enjoy deck builders, you're probably not going to like this one, and if you are happy with sticking with Slay the Spire or another deck builder, well, you don't really need this one. Blue Fire. I heard a lot of buzz about this game, and after playing it, I think I get why. This is a Dark Souls-esque game with a great visual style placed on top of it and a bit more story. Players are in control of an experiment and must travel through the land fighting evil monsters and tackling large challenges, and also trying to find their way. But this is also Dark Souls-esque in its difficulty. I found myself having a few early issues, but when I got a handle on the combat, it was actually pretty good. There's a good parry system, very fluid battle system, and what appears to be excellent hit detection. Of course, the downside is that Blue Fire is pretty challenging, but I think that's also a positive to most fans of the genre, and I don't have a big problem with that. There are also some special platforming sections in the game to get health upgrades, and there's a decent amount of distance between the checkpoints. However, with at least 11 hours according to how long to beat, this will be a meaty adventure, and the experience so far is good. While I think it is a little hard, there is of course also an easier difficulty as well, which I haven't tried, but kind of invalidates any criticism about difficulty. So pick this up if you like Dark Souls. I know there is platforming, but this is really Dark Souls with a little platforming on the side. Check this out if you like the graphics that you're seeing. This is a very solid game, and I'm only surprised it's so far down the list. I think it's really that it just didn't have as much publicity as some of the higher titles, but it's worth checking out. And if you dislike Dark Souls, well, you're probably also going to dislike this, so it might be better to skip it. Encoyda, a point-and-click adventure game with a young girl named Tina and a robot given to her at birth named Sam 53. Now these two characters are alone in the world, they're kind of homeless, and during the first chapter they have to gather supplies for their normal day, things like food and socks for Tina and oil for Sam 53. There's actually a vast and interesting world to explore here with an interesting piece about cyberspace that we didn't get to explore in the first hour though. However, this is a point-and-click adventure game, so that's going to live and die based on how good the puzzles are in it. In Encoyda's case, I'm not really sold yet. I love Monkey's Island, the Sierra Quest franchises, and Sam & Max, so this genre is right up my alley, but I'm also very careful about moon logic, and Encoyda does seem to throw too many objects at the player and just waits for them to figure out specific solutions to a problem. Also, a lot of the game is trying to figure out who to talk to, and then makes it more difficult because both Tina and Sam have different dialogues with every character. The warning screen at the beginning of the game is a bit of a red flag as well. It says that it will be stereotyping people, it says the references are coincidences, but also mentions Kickstarters had some control here, and the game is political even if it claims it isn't. It's like someone saying, I'm not a racist, but... I mean, when you see a warning screen like that, you know you're going to be in for a wild ride. So pick this up if you like point-and-click adventure games, even bad ones especially. There is pixel hunting, there is repetitive dialogue that's going to get annoying, but there is a competent game here. It looks great as you can see, and even if there are some common issues with the genre, maybe you can enjoy it. Also, this is a GOG key, a GOG key, so be aware of that. And that's what I have for my 12 choices, but of course, there's a bonus game, and it's a doozy. Get ready for Retired Men's Nude Beach Volleyball. Now, I play about 200 to 300 games a year, which is entirely too much, of course, but Retired Men's Nude Beach Volleyball is probably the weirdest title I have ever played. What's even stranger is I played for almost 2 hours on stream because I really just wanted to see the end. Retired Men's Nude Beach Volleyball is a bit weak when it comes to the actual volleyball aspects, but the writing in the game is so well done, I couldn't put the game down. I spent the 2 hours I played deciding if it was overanalyzing the game and expecting a deeper meaning to the writing, or if it was just an insane conversation between a couple guys who had just stripped down and played volleyball. Without spoiling it, there's a pretty satisfying ending. However, I also think Retired Men's Nude Beach Volleyball could have been trimmed by maybe about half the runtime. The gameplay just isn't that great, and while the writing often got me hooked to keep playing, it's a very long and drawn out game. The actual volleyball game is a bit weak, and there are enough glitches, whether intentional or not, that I was becoming more frustrated as I continued playing. I still would recommend it if players want a unique game or want a reason to think a little too hard about large existential questions while playing an average at best volleyball game. With that said, how's this month? Well, there are 2 early access games, and I'm going to be honest. I'm not thrilled about it. I think Last Oasis just reached Season 4, yet early access. It's a perfect example of how companies use early access to avoid criticism. On the other hand, the Cepheus Protocol is extremely rough to the point that I really don't understand why it was included in the bundle. This game is missing multiplayer, a campaign, and the gameplay just still feels unfinished. The UI is bad. I mean, I can go get back into it. I'm not. Early access games that feel like they're desperate grasps to try to stay afloat really just don't fit in with the idea of humble choice. There's also a lot of roguelites, including Outer Space, We Need to Go Deeper, As Far as the Eye, Nowhere Protocol, and pieces of Cepheus Protocol, which is either 4 or 5 games depending on how you count Protocol. While I love the roguelite genre, I think that's a bit much, and Humble even has released an additional roguelite bundle at the same time as this Humble choice. Still, there are a lot of fresh games in this bundle. Only Outer Space appears to have been bundled anywhere before. A few games have been on Game Pass previously, but we'll talk about that after the conclusion. There is actually a lot of value in this pack though, and if someone's looking to start or build on a library that they have, this does have a reasonable amount of quality. So as always, let's do the strongest and the weakest of the month, starting with the bottom. The third weakest of this month is Encoyda. Honestly, this is here mostly because it should have been better, but point-and-click games are of course hard, and they're giving it the best shot, but there's still just common issues that all point-and-click games suffer with, and it's so frustrating to see that. Not necessarily a bad experience, just weak, which is what this list is about. And the second weakest of the month is Out of Space. It does feel like cleaning the house or your room, just in space. And while it is a good concept, it got tedious extremely quickly, like within 10 to 15 minutes. Again, it's probably better with more players, but it can also get out of control that much faster. The weakest of the month, though, is Cepheus Protocol. I think there's one bad game this month, one game that I just don't think belongs, and it's Cepheus Protocol. Even with all the potential, that's what everyone seems to say, this game as it is now isn't worth playing. Maybe a year or two from now, it'll be one of the best RTSs of all time. I doubt it. Prove me wrong, devs, please. I'd love to eat those words. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the strongest of the month. I will say that 2 through 4 on this list were some of the closest I've ever had for my review, but let's just dive in. The fifth strongest of this month is Nowhere Prophet. This is a fantastic take on the roguelite and deck building genres. I love seeing how each location has what feels like a unique event offering a reason for the results. If you like Slay the Spire, definitely check this one out. The fourth strongest of the month is Superliminal, an excellent mind-bending puzzle game that focuses on both confusing the player and then illuminating them. So many puzzles feel impossible just before you realize every incorrect assumption that you have made, and that's what a great puzzle game is about. The third strongest of the month is Carto. I love the concept of changing the world with a map, and Carto does this extremely efficiently. The first hour has me excited for more, and each area seems to have new and fresh gameplay to explore, so I can't wait to see what else Carto might have in store for me. The second strongest of the month is Blue Fire. This game snuck up on me and made me accept it. The genre is just great, I love the art style, and I really want to see what this game is going to do because I feel like I've only scratched the surface. I haven't even seen a real boss yet. While this might be weaker than Carto or Subliminal potentially, the length of Blue Fire makes me think it's worthy of that second place spot, which only leaves the strongest of the month being Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. Now, I don't like to give the top spot to a headliner or first game on the list. It's a de facto winner usually because of the size and scale of the game, but my god, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night is so damn good, it easily earns this spot. It's a game that's never been cheaper than $15, so it's definitely a deal here, but it's also a game that will give you at least 20 hours for the first playthrough of the campaign. Multiple free DLCs have also been released, 2 bonus characters, a classic mode that's excellent just like Castlevania 1, Boss Rush, Boss Revenge, and honestly, this was just such a great game at launch, and it has continued to grow after that launch. If you have avoided it or just haven't picked it up for whatever reason, this is a great time to check it out. And that's this month's Humble Choice. This has been an absolute blast. Anytime I talk about games that are already in my library is a pretty good sign for the choice, but this has been an all-around killer bundle in my mind. I'd probably say that this is the best so far in 2021, but I haven't actually run those numbers. Now, a channel update that I think will be important to you, dear viewer, especially if you've made it this far in the video. I assume you like my Humble Choice reviews. Well, that's great to hear. But what if I said you could get a similar review for the Xbox Game Pass? Well, the fact is, due to a suggestion made by Biohazard Battle, thanks man, that's exactly what I'm going to be doing. The first week of each month will of course be the Humble Choice review like always. I'm going to make the third week of the month look at what you should be checking out on the Xbox Game Pass over the past 4 to 6 weeks. That's going to be a slightly different format as well. I'll also have deeper plays more than just the first hour, but I'm quite excited about that. I'm looking forward to it. I'm also going to be streaming some of the new releases for Xbox Game Pass on Twitch, such as The Ascent or Bug Fables coming up. That's more of a game club. You can always play those games ahead of time and then come and discuss it, or at least just check out what I'm playing. Those streams will be on Tuesday and Thursday, respectively, and I'm closing in on 50 followers on Twitch, so any help there would definitely be appreciated. I'm KingLink Reviews on Twitch as well if you have not checked me out. So that's what I have for this month. I hope you're super excited to see the first Game Pass review. I hope you've enjoyed this month. I mean, like I've said, I definitely have. And if you like this video, you want to see more from me, consider subscribing, ringing that bell, or leaving a comment and letting me and everyone else know what you thought about this month bundle. I always love to hear other people's opinions, of course. If you want more, check out my video review of Bloodstained Ritual of the Night on screen now, as well as another video somewhere. Until then, I'm King Link, and thanks for watching.